Since this is going to be our house anyway, could you move out soon, Victoria? She demanded. I took a deep breath and responded calmly. I think you're misunderstanding. Neither this house nor the apartments will be going to Adrian. Victoria was momentarily speechless, processing my words. Let me introduce myself. My name is Aubrey, and I'm a 35-year-old office worker. At the moment, I'm living with my parents in our family home. What follows is the absurd situation created by my unreasonable sister-in-law. I have a younger brother, Adrian, who is 3 years younger than me. A few years ago, he married a beautiful woman named Victoria. At first, she was always cheerful, showing kindness to both my parents and me whenever she visited. I liked her a lot, and we often went out for meals with Adrian. I thought we were building a good relationship, but then one day, Victoria barged into our home, fuming with anger. It happened one sunny weekend afternoon. The doorbell rang twice in quick succession as I was heading towards the door. Surprised by the urgency, I opened it to find Victoria standing there with a stern expression. Victoria, what's wrong? I asked, concerned. I need to talk about something important concerning this house, she said, her tone serious. About this house? What's going on? I asked, puzzled. I'm coming in, she said curtly. Before I could respond, she stepped right past me and into the house. Adrian followed a little later. Hey, sis, Adrian said as he entered. What's going on? You two seem intense. Confused, I asked. Why are you both here? Victoria seems upset. Adrian hesitated before explaining. He works in nursing care, but his salary is modest. Despite this, Victoria had always been supportive, helping with the family budget by working part-time. However, recently, the conversation had shifted to inheritance matters regarding our family home. Our family owns a large plot of land with several rental apartments. Victoria seemed to believe that Adrian, being the eldest son, would inherit both the house and the apartments. Suddenly, she proposed moving into the family home. When Adrian asked her why, she explained that they could save money by living there instead of continuing to pay rent for their small apartment. Adrian tried to reason with her, saying, We don't have kids yet, and I'm not sure it's the right time to move into the family home. Plus, my sister lives here. Victoria, however, was firm. Then I'll speak to your sister directly about it. We want to move in. It felt like a bit of a greedy move, but I suppose it's not uncommon for people to start thinking this way when planning for a family. Still, her sudden desire to move into our family home was a bit unexpected. Let's sit down and talk about this inside, I suggested, trying to remain calm. I've always found Adrian to be a bit spineless in situations like this. He's a kind person, but not exactly assertive. That's why I thought he and Victoria made a good match, both gentle and mild-mannered. But now, it seemed like he was completely under her control. When we all sat down in the living room, Victoria's angry demeanor startled my parents and me. We had no idea what was going on. I quickly poured everyone tea and asked, What exactly is going on here? What is this important matter concerning the house? Victoria didn't waste any time. To put it simply, we want to live here, she said. So, you want to move in with us? I clarified. She shook her head. No, not exactly. That would be awkward for everyone, right? You and your in-laws run the apartment next door, don't you? Yes, I replied, still confused. We want you and your in-laws to move into one of those apartments, and we'd like to move into this house, Victoria stated, her voice firm. What? My parents and I gasped in shock, staring at her in disbelief. I glanced at Adrian, who could only manage a nervous, half-hearted smile. If you move into the apartments you own, you wouldn't have to pay rent, right? Victoria continued, as though her logic was obvious. Well, yes, we wouldn't have to pay rent, but why do we have to move? I asked, utterly confused. Victoria leaned in slightly, her voice insistent. This house is just too big for your parents now, isn't it? With all the upkeep and cleaning, it's only going to get harder for them, and those stairs to the second floor are steep, someone could get hurt falling. Adrian, you agree with me, don't you? She said, turning to Adrian for support. Yeah, Adrian mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were essentially suggesting that we leave so they could take over this large house. My parents were so stunned they couldn't even respond. Well, there aren't any vacancies in our apartments right now, so we can't move, I replied, trying to stay composed. Oh, really? Well, which lease ends first? Victoria asked, unfazed. You could just decide not to renew one and make space for us, right? Victoria, what are you talking about? I said, my frustration rising. Why do we have to move into the apartments? I've already said we'll consider it when we get older and need assistance. Right now, we're all fine. We don't feel like this house is too big. My parents want to spend their retirement here. Victoria sighed, clearly growing impatient. I didn't want to be blunt, but you've been blunt from the start. It's inevitable, you know? Adrian is the eldest son, so eventually, this house and the apartments will be his. If we ever have kids, we'll need more space. It would make sense to start living here now and get used to it. Wait, kids? Are you planning on having kids? My mother asked, caught off guard. No, I mean, if we have kids, Victoria stammered, clearly flustered by the question. Her argument was so forceful, as if we should just hand over the house because they might want children someday. So, since it's going to be our house eventually anyway, could you move out sooner? Victoria pressed, unyielding. I turned to my brother. Did you talk about this? I asked, disbelief creeping into my voice. Adrian simply shrugged and smiled awkwardly. Really? So, Victoria's been pushing for this all along, huh? I sighed, trying to maintain my composure. There's been some misunderstanding here. This house and the apartments will not be Adrian's, I said, my tone firm. What do you mean? Victoria asked, clearly stunned. I'll explain, I said. Both this house and the apartments are in my name, so Adrian can't inherit them. Victoria's mouth dropped open. What? No way, she gasped, visibly shocked. Why, isn't it usually the eldest son who inherits everything? She stammered, clearly trying to make sense of it. My father, who had been quietly listening, began to explain. Actually, both this house and the apartments were built by my parents, but when they ran into financial trouble, I took on all their debts. Since I was the only one in a stable position at the time, I added to my father's explanation. Just recently, we've managed to pay off all the debts from the apartment business, and now we're starting to see a small profit, but we're still in the red, overall. Victoria seemed too stunned by the revelation that Adrian wouldn't be inheriting the house or the apartments to grasp the financial details. She looked lost, unable to comprehend the situation. I won't accept this, she suddenly declared, her voice sharp. If that's the case, then we should get a share of the income from the apartments. Her argument made no sense. How could she think she was entitled to any of that? I held my ground. Absolutely not, I said firmly. But Victoria wasn't backing down. Next time, I'll bring my parents, she said defiantly, pulling Adrian with her as they left. I was frustrated, wondering why Adrian hadn't just stood up to her from the beginning. This whole mess could have been avoided. A week later, just as she had threatened, Victoria returned, this time with her parents in tow. The conversation resumed in our living room, and we explained the situation once again. Victoria's parents listened quietly, nodding along as we spoke. After we were finished, her father finally spoke up. This sounds strange, he said, his tone even. If your parents pass away, wouldn't Adrian be entitled to a portion of the estate as a reserved portion due to inter vivos gifts? He asked. It seems like you're keeping everything to yourself. Doesn't that sound unfair? He smiled smugly, clearly thinking he had cornered us. Victoria wore a similar smirk, but I wasn't going to back down. Well, you might be right, but have you forgotten about the debt attached to these apartments? I replied coolly. I can prove that I paid off the debt. Adrian has no proof that he contributed to it, because I took on the responsibility for all the payments. If you want a share of the inheritance, then you'd need to cover half of the debt I took on. That would be about this much, I said, pulling out my phone and entering the figure into the calculator app. I showed them the amount, and their faces went pale. They were silent. That's impossible. That much debt? Victoria exclaimed, her voice trembling. Isn't that just increasing our debt? I didn't miss the implication in her words. Debt? What do you mean by that? I asked, my patience starting to wear thin. Victoria quickly averted her gaze. It's nothing, she muttered, clearly avoiding the question. Adrian, what's going on? I turned to my brother, eyes narrowed. What aren't you telling me? I don't know anything about it, Adrian stammered, looking as confused as ever. Victoria, why do you want to live in this house so badly? I asked, my tone now icy. It was then that Victoria's father finally spoke up, his voice reluctant. I'm sorry, he said, his tone deflated. Our daughter recently took a big loss in the stock market. He sounded genuinely downcast, as if the weight of the situation had finally hit him. What? I said, shocked. It was clear Adrian hadn't known anything about this either. Why, Victoria? Adrian asked, turning to his wife, his voice full of confusion. I heard it was a good investment opportunity from someone at work, she stammered, trying to defend herself. What, are you serious? That sounds like a scam, Adrian exclaimed. Shut up, it's your fault for not earning enough, Victoria snapped, her face reddening. What? Adrian said, stunned. So you were planning to take over our house and use the money you'd save on rent to cover your debts? I asked, incredulous. What's wrong with that? Victoria shot back, her voice trembling. We didn't have any other choice. I was horrified. She had the audacity to try and steal our house to solve her own problems without even consulting us. This was beyond unacceptable. There's nothing more to discuss, I said, my tone cold and firm. Please leave. But wait, I'm really in trouble, Victoria pleaded. Please, you have to help us. Help you? I said, growing furious. I also took on a lot of debt for my parents, but I paid it off myself. And you? Victoria, don't keep making excuses. You're young, you don't have kids, so stop working part-time and get a full-time job. Don't blame Adrian for not making enough when you're content with the bare minimum. Adrian, for goodness sake, stand up for yourself. This is exactly why she walks all over you. Adrian and Victoria were both silent, taken aback by my outburst. Anyway, this is your debt. You and Adrian figure it out, and get out of here now, I commanded, my voice unwavering. Victoria, her parents, and Adrian all left the house quickly, as though they couldn't get away fast enough. Later, I received a call from Victoria's parents. They were apologizing profusely, saying they were deeply sorry for their daughter's behavior. Apparently, my words had hit home with them, and they had decided not to support Victoria or Adrian with any more money, no matter how many times they asked. Adrian had been unknowingly dragged into this mess because of his wife's poor decisions. Though he had chosen not to divorce her, I hoped he would step up and take responsibility for his actions, and maybe even start acting with some dignity toward Victoria. I knew it was only a matter of time before they came back asking for help, but this time, we were resolute. We weren't going to offer a handout. I hoped this situation would force both Adrian and Victoria to take a long, hard look at themselves and realize the consequences of their actions.